Hello, and thank you for joining us here on the Neutral Zone. I am Phil Milani, joined as always by my trusty sidekick, my partner in crime. Really, the best way to describe this person is my everything. It's at Eric Dalala.
Phil, great to be with you remotely today.
You, of course, are at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. I begged to go with you, but the higher ups, they just said, nope, we can't do it.
He said real R's only. And that was a tough blow for your psyche. Yeah.
Not only did I not get to go down there and like hang out with you and just like hit the town, but I also am missing out on some big interviews, Eric.
Some big interviews. I'm currently, Phil, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I have a nice little Jaguar behind me on the wall.
Is that a Jaguar? I was wondering what that was.
It's a Jaguar, a relative of the Northwestern Wildcat.
That's a South Alabama Jaguar, not to be confused with a Jacksonville Jaguar.
Very same creature, different variant, I guess.
Got it. Just like a virus or something.
Variant might not be the best word these days.
Bad word.
But no, I'm currently sitting, Phil, in the Broncos suite at the Senior Bowl where they did their evaluations on Tuesday and Wednesday. It's the weather's not too nice today, so they moved inside. And I said, I might as well take this suite for the day.
Yeah. I mean, a suite is a suite at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's no better sort of inside behind the scenes access than what you're getting right now. Is that what you're telling me?
Right. I can see the Broncos have posted their offseason plan on the wall here to my left. I can see the whole thing. I can't show it to anybody, but it's right there.
Yeah. You say, take that behind the Broncos. I'm the real behind the Broncos. Is that what you're saying?
This is behind the Broncos.
Okay. The podcast. Yeah. Eric, we don't really have a lot of time to be silly today because this is a really important show for us.
That's right, Phil. While down here in Mobile, Alabama, I was able to talk to General Manager George Paton.
What? Wait, you talked to George Paton?
He asked where you were. He was like, where's my guy, Phil? And I said, today I'm going to have to fill in. Exactly. But no, I got to talk to George about the Senior Bowl, about head coach Nathaniel Hackett. And Phil, probably most importantly, I talked to him about the number one position in all of sports, the quarterback spot.
Did you ask him like, hey, are you going to trade for a big time quarterback or something?
Oh, well, Phil, why don't we get to my interview right now? You can find it.
Oh, you want to go to it right now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Toss to it. Set it up.
Introducing General Manager George Paton, live on the Neutral Zone. George, how the first few days been working with Nathaniel Hackett?
Oh, it's been great. Everything, I kind of thought, when we went through the interview process, very energetic. Obviously now he's grinding, trying to get his coaching staff solidified, and he's tireless worker, a lot of energy, like we said, he has a lot of juice. It's been a really fun few days and really excited moving forward.
I'm sure you're still in the initial stages of the conversations about the roster, but how closely aligned do you feel your vision for this team is?
Yeah, I think, we established that through the interview process, basically the three interviews we had together. And I think we're definitely aligned in the roster and how we're going to run things throughout the building. He hasn't had a chance to dive into the roster. Right now he's focused on the coaching staff. And, when I get back from the Senior Bowl, myself, Nathaniel and his staff will sit down along with my staff and do a deep dive into our roster.
How do you feel about the staff he's put together so far, and how involved are you in that process?
No, I'm really, really excited about the staff he's putting together. He talked about that in the interview process about his staff, what his vision is for the staff, young, diverse, energetic, and he's certainly on the way to it's hard to get a staff. You don't know who you can get, but I've never seen anyone work as hard as he does on the phone interviewing potential candidates. And so I'm really excited for the staff. I am involved with it. as a sounding board. And, I know different, people around the league, as does he. So just getting background but it's his deal, and he has a great vision for his staff.
Moving to the Senior Bowl, this is just the first step in a long process. What do you try to get out of this week?
Just, these are the top players, the top seniors in the country. And, a lot of them I haven't seen live. So it's really important just to follow them around through the week and, kind of see how they go about practice. How do they compete against the best? And then you get them at night, you can interview them and get to know them a little bit. So it's really the first step in the draft process, or the second. The fall is the first step. Then we get the combine, and then, more interviews. And so this is a great time just to be around the top players.
Quarterback's obviously going to be a big story for this team. A lot of the top young guys are here. Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Carson Strong. You saw some of these guys in person in the fall. Why is it important to see them in person, and what have you seen from them so far this week?
It's really important to see them in person at all positions, but especially quarterback. There's so much, quarterbacks, have to do during a game, during practice. How are they, when they're not on the field, when they're on the bench, how are they amongst their teammates? How does the ball jump off their hand? How are they in competitive situations, in 2-minute drills, no huddle? So though it's really important during the fall to see them live, and then here, just again, competing against the best, seeing, Willis versus Pickett and all the other quarterbacks just back to back. I think there's 6 here. And so you can see 2 practices a day, and just kind of, you stack them up. How do they throw it? How athletic are they? How do they handle an interception? How do they handle adversity? And so it's just, you can't see all that on tape. So it's very beneficial.
And then what do you try to gain from these guys in the meetings away from the field?
Right. I mean, we have 20 minutes with these guys. So really, I just want to get to know them. We're going to dig in later. We'll have an hour Zoom. We'll see them at the combine. We'll see them at their pro days. The initial visit, this evening, we'll have interviews. Is really, I just want to get to know them. We'll have points of emphasis for each of these players, things where we need to dig in, and, whether it's character or learns or that type of thing. But this initial visit, I just want to get to know them as a person, as people.
How big of a role will Coach Hackett have in evaluating the quarterback position, and what sort of faith do you have in how he can develop a young player if you decide to go that route?
Yeah, part of the appeal of Coach Hackett is his ability to develop younger players and especially quarterbacks. So he's going to have a big time role, as will the other coaches, in our free agency process as well as our draft process.
Are there certain things you have to weigh at the quarterback position in particular when you're deciding, is it going to be a rookie? Is it going to be a veteran, especially with the way this roster is, where it's already a very competitive group?
Certainly. I mean, you weigh the free agency class compared to the draft class, and that's what we're doing now. If we don't think the draft class is very good, we're probably going to try to go heavy in the free agency or the trade market. But I think there's some talented guys in this rookie class, so we'll weigh that as we will other positions. What are the strengths of free agency compared to the draft? And if the draft isn't strong at a certain position, we're going to go heavy. We're going to be very aggressive in free agency.
Sure, we'll ask you more about quarterback down the road, but what is the strength of this draft class? Kind of your early impressions.
Yeah, I think the big guys thus far, and you can see it down here at the Senior Bowl. The offensive line, there's some good tackles, there's some good interior, and then the defensive line, I've been really impressed down here at the Senior Bowl, and I'm just getting into it, obviously, but I do think it's going to be a big man's type draft.
Last one for you, George. We had a very productive draft class last year, a lot of early contributors. How crucial is it to the foundation of this team to stack another one on top of last year's class?
No, I think it's imperative. You need to stack, one after another, and that's how you build a foundation, and that's how you build a consistent winner year in and year out. You don't want to win one year and take a step back, but if you can keep drafting well, it's a sustainable roster from a financial standpoint, and again, that's why we brought Nathaniel Hackett here, is because his ability to develop young talent. And so, among other things.
George, great catching up with you down here at the Senior Bowl. We're looking forward to this offseason.
Appreciate you, Eric. Thank you very much.
A big thank you to George Paton for spending some time with us. So that's the only interview he did during Senior Bowl week with anybody. So some exclusive content here for Neutral Zone Nation. And I think some interesting nuggets there for us to go through.
This is what NZ Nation has come to expect, is just this sort of insider information,
Yeah,
want,
I've been waiting in the rain for days for this interview. I just haven't slept.
George Paton, boom, here's George Paton, boom.
Exactly.
This is sort of just how we operate.
You're nice and cozy. I mean, it looks like you're in the office. You made it through the blizzard to get to the office.
I did. Yeah, because for this podcast.
Right. But most members of NZ Nation, maybe they're curled up on the couch. They got their fire on, a cup of hot cocoa, and it's like, boom, George Paton, right to them.
Yeah. They were probably relaxed, and then they saw on their phone, it popped up. It was like, Broncos GM George Paton visits the neutral zone. And they're like, oh my gosh, I got to get up for this. So really pay attention. Okay, well, Eric, let's dive into your interview there. Some of the big takeaways here. As Nathaniel Hackett is putting his staff together here, we've seen him already hire several offensive coaches. I thought it was sort of interesting just how George Paton is factoring into that process and, being a sounding board for Hackett.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds to me like it's still going to be Nathaniel Hackett's decision, but it is interesting that George didn't just say, this is all his deal. He's going to handle this on his own. And I think that's good because they're still kind of crafting their vision for this team together. You want to be aligned with each other. You want to be moving in the same direction. And so I think it makes sense for George Paton to kind of have some input here. And, I assume based on what George said, it's still going to be Hackett's decision. But as you're putting this coaching staff together, it's a crucial element. People are saying, okay, well, he's the play caller on offense, so the rest of the offensive staff hires don't matter that much. I don't know that that's true. I mean, you need a good coaching staff throughout. It's going to be critical to your ability to kind of improve this offense. And so we know how thorough George Paton is. We know what kind of football mind he has. I think it's a good thing that he's involved in this process.
Yeah, because you're talking about, even George Paton, this is just his second year as a general manager in the NFL. This is obviously Hackett's first time going around as a head coach. I feel like when you're trying to assemble your staff, some experience kind of goes along with that, just because most of it is based off of the relationships you've built during your career. Hey, I worked with this guy in this place. I worked with this guy in this place. You want to assemble the best group of football minds as you can to coach your team. And, that's an important process. I mean, you just want the best minds around.
Yeah, and I think that George Paton obviously has great insight on the coaches that are already in Denver. And so, if Nathaniel Hackett says, hey, I want to consider having Zach Azzani stay on this staff, and that's just kind of me picking a name and speculating there. But if he says, hey, I might want Azzani to be here, George Paton's worked with him for a year. He has great insight into how Azzani is as a coach, how he works with players, that sort of thing that Nathaniel Hackett might not have. And so the more we hear George say a lot, collaborative, work together, kind of have multiple people moving toward the same goal. This is a good example of that. And I don't want to twist it out of proportion and be like, oh, George Paton has control over.
No.
I don't think that that's it, but I do think it's a good sign. Someone was saying the other day, one of the most important relationships you can have is between your GM and your head coach. This seems to be a good sign that they're working together early.
Yeah, you want them to work together, but ultimately you want it to be Hackett's decision because it's his staff. You know what I mean? And I think that you want to be able to empower your head coach to say, this is your coaching staff. You do what you feel like is best here. And it sounds like that's the case there. Like you just don't want too much meddling. And, the interesting thing so far to me, Eric, is that since the Super Bowl time, there has been a lot of holdovers when you're talking about these assistant coaches. You're talking about like Reggie Herring, Bill Kolar. These people have really gone through the head coaches here. It really sounds like Hackett is building his whole staff from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some names that we haven't heard yet, but like Mike Munchak, for example, the Broncos have hired an offensive line coach. It means Mike Munchak won't be back. And I know people are upset about that. Fans are upset about that. It makes sense. His system isn't really compatible with what
O-line is a different sort of beast where you need the O-line to align with your offensive philosophy.
Right. And so, but you're right. You know, there are people who have been here for a long time, who have made it through several different coaching changes that may not be here next year. And it seems like, based on the hires that have been reported, the hires that we've announced, that Nathaniel Hackett's really trying to build this young, energetic coaching staff. And I'll be interested to see, and we can talk more about this later. I'll be interested to see kind of, is there some experience that he mixes in? But certainly so far with these hires, a lot of young guys.
So yeah, that was my first takeaway from your interview with him. And then obviously talking about the quarterback position. I mean, that's what everybody wants to know about here, and what direction the Broncos are going in. It does appear that George Paton is going to do his homework on all possible situations, whether that's starting right there at the Senior Bowl, looking at some of these younger guys, which it sounds like nobody's really stuck out or shined really brightly down there in Mobile. Obviously, the weather doesn't help, but it does sound like George Paton is going to do his homework on all these young guys. And then you brought up free agency market, and then also he brought up the trade market there.
Yeah, which of course is the kind of the unspoken elephant in the room, if you will, around the Broncos these days. But yeah, I mean, starting with the rookie quarterbacks, we know that he'd already gone to see Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett this fall. He went to see Malik Willis and Matt Corral. Matt Corral is kind of the only guy of this quarterback class that's not down here in Mobile because he's not a senior. Senior Bowl, Phil.
Senior Bowl.
You gotta graduate to be here. You gotta get that degree to be in young Mobile. And then I think there's been reports that he went to see Carson Strong as well. So he's seen these guys in person. As he mentioned in the interview, Phil, quarterback is the most important position to watch, you know, with your own eyes in person, not on the field, not on the film. So that's all interesting. And I thought it was telling, Phil, that he said, you know, in the thought around this class is that it's not good. You know, people are like, oh, the quarterback class is just kind of bad this year. There's nobody there. He said he saw some talent, and based on what we know in the NFL, it's likely that one of these guys is going to end up being good. And so it's all about, can you evaluate who that's going to be?
Well, there are some years where there's hype and then none of the guys end up being like the franchise types of players, you know.
It's rare that happens, though. Like, the odds are that one of these guys is going to end up being a good player.
I think that one thing is true is that like two of them will probably go in the top 10. But I do think that heading into this process, it's still early. It doesn't appear like there's a Joe Burrow, you know, where you're like, this guy's the guy, or Trevor Lawrence or somebody like that, where you're like, this person is going to come in and immediately change a franchise. It doesn't seem like there's that type of a player in this year's draft.
No, I agree with that. And it raises the possibility that at 9, the Broncos could get the number 1 quarterback. You know, I mean, I assume that a quarterback's going to get taken before 9, but maybe the Broncos decide, hey, you know, Matt Corral's our guy, or Sam Howell's our guy, or Kenny Pickett's our guy. And they say, we're going to move up to 5 and get him, or 4 and get him. And if you fall in love with a guy, it doesn't really matter what everybody else thinks, you should go get him. So I do think it's interesting that, and not that I expected him to rule this out, but it sounds like they're going to very thoroughly evaluate this class and decide, hey, is there an option here? But yeah, kind of the other thing, Phil, is he mentioned, because my question was geared around, this roster is so close to competing. Do you have to weigh that when you pick a quarterback? And he said, well, if the draft class isn't up to snuff, we're going to approach it through free agency or a trade. And listen, I know the trade thing will get some attention. There's lots of guys you could trade for. It's not just kind of those 2, Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, that are out there. There's, you know,
that's all of them.
That's all that you care
about. That's
all
I care about.
But there's a lot of other guys that could refer to. So
of course.
But yeah, interesting to know that he recognizes this is a good roster and they got to be ready to take advantage of it.
And I think that that is the case, no matter what the position is. And he kind of alluded to that he wasn't just talking about quarterback, but anytime you head into the offseason, your goal is to make the football team better all around. And if you just weigh the draft class versus the free agency class and just say, all right, free agency is really heavy in this position. Maybe we could get a guy here. The draft is heavy in this position. Maybe we can get a guy here. And you just got to weigh those two options, and quarterback, I think, probably falls into that category. But like you mentioned, this team has a lot of young talent on the offensive side of the ball that is heading toward the end of their rookie contract, or like a guy like Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick just got new deals, where I think that this offense is ready to sort of take off a little bit. And you wonder, okay, if we insert a young guy at quarterback here, unless he is like a Joe Burrow, where you're talking about his second season, they're contending here. It doesn't sound like maybe there's that guy, but unless there's that boom like that, then you're talking about a little bit more of a project.
Right. Yeah. And listen, a lot of these teams, you do have to take a year and just kind of bite the bullet and deal with that learning curve. And then you get to reap the reward a little bit later. But yeah, you have to find that guy first. And I will say, Phil, I talked to George off the podcast for some other content that'll be coming soon on. I know. Sorry.
Wow.
Sorry.
Yeah. Keep going.
DenverBroncos.com. And one of the things I asked him was about Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick and Noah Fant and all these guys that, maybe didn't have the production that they expected. And he said that, they've got to be better, but Nathaniel Hackett, other people they interviewed, they're all thrilled about this young talent and think that there's a way to get them involved, to take advantage of them. And he mentioned that part of that starts with getting better quarterback play.
And I'm sure that that was all part of the interview process. I mean, George even mentioned that, just like them talking about this team, you've got to be, if you're Hackett, excited to get to play with these toys. You know what I mean? Like the chest is full. You just need to be able to find that quarterback, I think. And so
unlock it,
What's that?
You need the treasure map.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you're like Nicolas Cage and you're like,
yeah,
the Declaration of Independence.
You're like, I need some lemon juice and a hair dryer.
MacGruber.
Yeah.
Figure it out. So I thought that was interesting.
MacGyver.
And then, MacGyver, not MacGruber.
MacGruber was a spoof movie, I think.
Yeah. That's what I know.
Yeah.
MacGyver. Yeah, there you go.
That's our patented Phil moment of the episode.
There you go. That's what you come here for. Then the last thing, just talking about this draft, you asked him, hey, where do you think this draft is really strong? He said this is a big man draft. Ooh. And so I thought that was kind of interesting as well, Eric.
Yeah. Did you think you would be drafted?
Me?
Yeah. You're kind of I'm
a tall guy.
Tall guy. Not big guy, but tall guy, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe if I put on like 50 pounds.
Yeah. Get out there.
Muscle, just pure muscle.
Yeah. With your back, do you think you could get down into a lineman stance and then be able to stand up again? Or do you think you'd probably just be stuck down there?
Well, much like my guy, Michael Porter Jr., it's just fixable, just fix it.
So we don't really know if it's fixable.
You don't really know. Yeah, you don't really know. Yeah, exactly.
Hardship.
Exactly. Yeah. See if I'm probably good for reception, and then I'd be dead.
So you're not even talking about playing line. You're talking about
tight end.
Okay.
Yeah, that's of course where I'd play.
Yeah, because you got the mix of speed and physicality.
Yes, much too fast for just a linebacker, and way too huge for a DB.
Right. Much too huge.
Yeah.
I think I'd be the guy up in the box being like, call timeout.
Me too. I could do that too.
Yeah, that would be. You'd be like, 30 seconds. What are we even doing here?
Yeah, let's go for it. Touchdown. Timeout.
You would score touchdowns.
Score touchdowns. Yeah. Well, that's interesting though, because Eric, if you talk about the Broncos' needs, maybe you're talking about a right tackle, maybe a nose tackle. I'm not sure, but when he's referring to this being a big man draft, I don't know. Does that align with the Broncos' needs right now? What do you think?
I mean, again, I talked to him a little bit more, and he said we got to get the right tackle position fixed. He mentioned, Bobby Massey could come back. He played well, but he said we got to find a guy that's going to solidify that right tackle spot for 5 to 6 years, or longer. You got to find the Broncos have had a revolving door at that position. What, Phil, since 2015, really? I mean, they've been trying to solve that problem for a long time, and Bobby Massey was probably the most successful guy that they've had here in the last few years. So that's a place you got to figure out. I do think there's room to improve the interior of the offensive line as well. I mean, Dalton Risner is going into the final year of his contract. Do you extend him, or do you try to find somebody to boost that position on the line? We don't know where Graham Glasgow is going to play. Obviously, you have Quinn Miners and Lloyd Cushenberry there. I think Quinn was probably the most impressive of those interior linemen last year. And so anyway, I think in general, the Broncos you can always use more offensive line depth. I think the Broncos are still trying to figure that out. So
The other part of that is, like, if they do end up investing in a quarterback, whether through whichever method they want to go through, you got to protect that guy, so you got to make sure that they're available to play. So,
and there's, it seems like there's enough of these guys. You talk about like a pass rusher, for example. If the Broncos trade their pick or they go quarterback with their first pick, you're obviously not going to get a top end edge rusher. And so you wonder, hey, is there going to be a good enough edge rusher later in the draft that's worth taking? The offensive linemen in this class, there certainly are. Like, you could get a tackle, I think, on day 2 and still be really happy with that guy.
yeah, of course. And especially if you're the Broncos, you got a wealth of picks there. So
Right.
on day 2, so they could do a lot of different things, but and of course it is very early, so the evaluation process just getting underway. It's a second step in the draft process, as we heard George Paton just say there. I thought it was interesting that, so many people make a big deal about all these athletic attributes, all the measurements, everything about strong arm, this or that. George says it's important to see the people, especially these quarterbacks, in person, to see how they respond to adversity. How do they conduct themselves on the bench? What happens if they throw an interception? How do they bounce back from that? And then, of course, the meeting times in the evening there. It seems like you really got to get to know the person much more than just the player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, people talk about, hey, how much does this matter? And I don't know, in the grand scheme of things, how much did 3 days of Senior Bowl practice matter? But I can tell you this, Phil, I was in the box yesterday as George Paton was scouting, and you can hear people in the other suites kind of like talking, chattering. George is he's not saying anything. He's just focused. He's watching these guys practice. He is locked in. And I know that the evaluation process is one of his favorite parts of the job. And I mean, for what it's worth, for Broncos fans, this guy's putting in the time to find the right pieces.
Behind the Broncos right there. You're bringing the information here. He's locked in. Okay, got it. That's good. That's good
I want you to know he's not I'm down here eating oysters.
Oysters?
I'm enjoying the seafood. George is locked in.
Yeah. And he concluded your interview by just stating how crucial it is that you could stack these draft classes. It's not good enough that, last year he hit on certainly his first 3 picks. You got to just continue to build and build and build.
Yeah. And I mean, that's like, look at the Chiefs, for example. They've spent so much money now on their quarterback, on some core players, that to be good enough to remain in contention, you have to hit on drafting. And as the Broncos, say they acquire a big name quarterback, or say they hit on a quarterback in the draft that they're going to have to re-sign, like, as you start giving contracts to players like Justin Simmons, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, you can't pay everybody. And so that means you've got to be really good around them with guys on rookie contracts. And so George is right. To have sustained success, you've got to be good in the draft. And did a great job last year, Phil, but you got to do it again.
And of course, you bring up the Chiefs there. The Chiefs will be home next weekend, just like the Broncos.
Yeah, so really, it had the same season, basically.
Eric, you talk about the personality of the quarterbacks. What do you think? Joe Burrow when he goes to the sideline, unlike a lot of other quarterbacks, he just sits there and looks stoic. Like he just does nothing is like phasing this guy. Other quarterbacks are like in the surface, they're like swiping through slides and looking at all the plays and everything. And he just sits down and he's just cool as a cucumber.
He's just thinking about what cigar he's going to smoke later.
Yeah. And you talk about arm strength and physical traits and this type of stuff. Joe Burrow does not have those things. Don't just like explode off the film, when you watch him. But I think where he really shines is in all these other areas.
Yeah, I'll say about the quarterbacks here, Phil. I know a lot was made of Malik Willis's day on Wednesday. I really thought Sam Howell had a pretty good day on Wednesday too.
How
he looks to be like the most physically gifted, I would say, as like the good combination of talent there for Sam Howell.
He's not even double jointed though.
No, that's right. Yeah. Kind of odd. I'm sure we'll have some more hand size talk at some point, but from our perspective, Phil, I think the quarterback that has the most swagger is definitely Kenny Pickett. From talking to him, I got the chance to talk to Howell, Pickett, and Malik Willis, and how of those three, Pickett, he exudes confidence.
Eric, did any of those guys happen to meet with the Broncos?
Yeah. Don't you love that?
I do.
I like it because you retweet it, then the whole world sees it and it gets retweeted.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to meet with everybody.
Yeah.
Except Pat Surtain didn't meet with the Broncos. And
have they talked to the Broncos?
Maybe it's more about who doesn't meet with the Broncos. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. It's like George is just there but he's not there to talk to anybody. He's like, I'm a decoy.
He told me who they're going to pick, but he made me promise not to tell you. I'll tell you off camera, but I can't tell anybody else.
Got it. So he just told you already.
Yeah. He was like, I know already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got a plan.
Pretty good.
Plan. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Eric. Well, good stuff there with that interview. I think that was an exclusive. Yeah. Did he even say anything about me or not really?
It was like your hair is almost as good as Phil's.
He would never say that. Equally as good. Equally.
The rain, I'll say, down here has not been good for the hair. I've had to wear a hat for 2 days, which, as you know, I don't like to do because you don't like to cover up your best hair,
Exactly. Yeah. Did you have to wear a coat? Because the quarter zip.
Yeah. No, I've got this quarter zip. I've just brought several different quarter zips down to Mobile.
Rain quarter zip, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It's a new. They're like, oh, do you want a rain coat? And I'm like, well, do you have a rain quarter zip in stock?
Got it. Yeah. Can I just pull it over? Yeah, that would be nice. Eric, of course, the Broncos have announced the hiring of 3 assistant coaches this week. Wanted to just touch on that a little bit here. I don't want to take away from your interview because that's the center, the focal point of this podcast. But the Broncos did hire Justin Outen to be their next offensive coordinator. Spent the last 3 years with the Green Bay Packers as their tight ends coach. Our good friend Clint Kubiak is back in the building. I bumped into him the other day just walking down the hallway. I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, I'm here to be the passing game coordinator. And I was like, I don't really know what that means, but okay, sounds good that you're here. And then, of course, Butch Barry is now the Broncos offensive line coach. What are your takeaways here from these 3 announcements?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Barry and Outen have familiarity with Nathaniel Hackett. He knows them. He's worked with them. So that gives him kind of you know what you're getting into. They know the system. They know how to teach it. He knows how he works with those guys. I think that's all important, especially on the offensive side of the football. I think you want to be one voice. You want to be communicating things clearly. They're obviously getting some young guys in the building, which I think is for the energy that Nathaniel Hackett has, a good idea. And then Clint Kubiak, of course, he spent some time in Denver. I think to be an offensive coordinator, call plays, he's going to come in with a different perspective, same system pretty much, but he can offer, his expertise. And it's a pretty big get, I would say, to get an offensive coordinator that, the Vikings weren't spectacular in the passing game, but they were 11th, 12th.
Yeah,
last
not bad.
A very solid performance. And so to have a former play caller on the staff, I think is a big get, especially given that there's some youth at other positions. Alton was a high school coach just a few years ago. And Butch Berry has some NFL experience, but obviously he's an ascending coach as well. So I think the addition of Clint Kubiak is really important. There's some reports getting out there about Ejiro Evero, the Rams passing game coordinator. He's our defensive passing game coordinator. So he kind of does the opposite of Clint Kubiak. But
can you explain to me what a passing game coordinator is? Explain it to me, and explain it to me like I'm in third grade or something.
Like you're 5. Yeah. So the passing game, you kind of coordinate it. You kind of passing,
just passing. Like if they went to Clint and they're like, "Do you think we should run the ball here, or what do you think we should?" And he's like, "No, just pass."
Yeah. And it's interesting, like play action pass. Is that run game coordinator? Is that passing game coordinator? Is there a play action pass coordinator?
I think that the tight ends coach would be involved in that one too.
Yeah, that could be important.
Yeah, because they block and catch. So like
that's when you get in there. You're like, guys, I got some ideas.
I'm the tight ends coordinator.
It is, it is interesting. I think the passing game coordinator / QB's coach, he's a guy that can probably float around to the wide receivers. I believe Clint Kubiak is a former college wide receiver.
I know Klein Kubiak was a wide receiver.
Clint
Kubiak too, huh?
I think so.
Okay. Ben Swanson?
Yeah, Ben, are you listening?
I will say, speaking of Ben Swanson, I mentioned maybe we should do the Outen route. And then he said, no. Let's do a segment called Out and Up. Out and Up. Out and Up.
Yeah. It appears he played safety. Sorry for the.
Thank you. Klein Kubiak, wide receiver, Rice Owls.
Yeah. Clint went to Colorado State and played.
Clint.
Yeah. Too many Kubiaks to keep track of. And then, of course, our friend Gary. He does it all. He played Q.
Yes, he did. Yep. Gary.
I think that the familiarity doesn't bother me on the offensive side. Obviously, you want to see how do you fill out the
familiarity? No, that's a good thing to have familiarity.
But I mean, in terms of like hiring people that I think that's good. You want to see how he fills out the rest of the staff: wide receiver, running back, tight ends. I believe those are the 3 positions still left open. Maybe you name a run game coordinator since you have a pass game coordinator. But then I think defensively, that's where, maybe there's a chance for some more perspectives. We'll have to see kind of where that goes. But I asked him, Phil, because he didn't talk much about it in his press conference about his defensive philosophy. And he said, Nathaniel Hackett, that is, said, hey, I like things that challenge me as an offensive coordinator, which is a front that moves before the snaps. You're not really sure where they're going to be. And then a secondary that disguises the coverage. So,
of course,
we'll be interested to see. He's mentioned Christian Parker as a guy that could stay on. They spent some time in Green Bay. So
another young guy.
How this staff develops. But I think the framework is in a good spot.
Yeah. Let me ask you about this, just because Nathaniel Hackett is an offensive-minded head coach. How much of a role, or how important is it to have, I guess, how involved do you think that Justin Outen will be as an offensive coordinator? Like, certainly it's not going to be like what Pat Shurmur was doing.
Right. No, I mean, I think he needs to have a good amount of responsibility, though, because I think Hackett's learned from Matt LaFleur, how do you manage the entire team? And so there's going to be times when, Outen has to run an offensive meeting because Hackett's, visiting with the defense, or he's taking care of something else. Or there's going to be times, when Clint Kubiak needs to talk specifically with the quarterbacks. I mean, obviously Hackett is going to spend a great deal of time with the quarterbacks, with the offense, but he's got to oversee the entire team. And so I wouldn't necessarily sell Outen short, sell Kubiak short. I mean, These are guys that are going to also probably have specific roles. Like he might put Outen in charge of, hey, I'm going to relay plays to you, or he might say, hey, you're in charge of the red zone now, or hey, I want you to focus on
gold zone.
Yeah, or I want you to focus on 2-minute offense and really get us strong there. I mean, if there's one thing it seems like they did in Green Bay, it's that Matt LaFleur really split up responsibilities and said, hey, I want you to be an expert in this field. And I think that it would make a lot of sense for Nathaniel Hackett to do the same thing. I mean, even Luke Getsy, the quarterback coach in Green Bay, had like his specific responsibilities that he worked on. And so, it's obviously less of a big deal than the defensive coordinator, because the defensive coordinator is going to call these plays and is going to be in charge of that unit. But it's still important who you have in that spot.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think that you want to have like the same vision, but then also be able to delegate some of these tasks, and Nathaniel Hackett, first-time head coach, these are things he's going to have to, sort of go through in terms of just how he wants to run the team and everything. So it'll be a learning process for sure.
I think the last thing I'll say about the coaching staff is that it'll be interesting to see what they do from an experience perspective, because a lot of these young coaches, typically when a young coach comes in, you hire a veteran defensive coordinator, a veteran offensive coordinator, and you kind of defer to them and you use their coaching experience. So far, the Broncos haven't done that. And so I'll be watching to see, do they find a spot where they keep a veteran coach, or they bring in someone with a lot of experience? Is there an assistant to the head coach that Nathaniel Hackett brings in that has done this before? Those are things I'll be watching. And if they don't do that, then I'll be really interested when we talk to Coach Hackett next. Why did you decide to not go in that direction?
I think that is crucial. Just somebody, there's two sides of it, right? Like you could just say, look, I want all my staff to be young and energetic and bring this enthusiasm. And also that sort of like helps solidify me as the head man and as a top guy. I think that's one approach. And then the other approach is like what you mentioned there, is just having a couple of guys that have been in their roles for a very long time. It does not sound like he's going in that direction, Hackett. It does seem like he wants, all these guys are going to be in new positions, it seems like.
Yeah. And listen, we'll see how it turns out. We don't know yet kind of what the final coaching staff will look like. Does he have a plan to have somebody in place? Is there going to be, are there going to be some veteran assistants that can stick around?
Yeah. So far it doesn't look like they're heading that way.
I don't even really remember who was Vance Joseph's defensive coordinator. I don't even really remember.
Bill Musgrave was his offensive coordinator, and then who was? Well, this is kind of what you get back. You just think of Vance as the defensive guy, So, Joe Woods.
Joe Woods, okay.
Yeah.
Well, and Bill Musgrave wasn't his first. Mike McCoy, of course, was his first offensive coordinator who had previous head coaching experience, and that didn't work because there was a clash, of what should we do?
Yeah.
Obviously, Mike had been a former head coach, and so I'm sure that working relationship didn't turn out great. So that there's evidence of both sides where, it works to have someone else in place, and then there's situations where it doesn't work. And so we'll just have to kind of see. But I am interested to hear, if they don't go with any veteran coaches, why is that the plan, and why did that seem like the right move? You just want good coaches, no matter when, how old they are. You want good coaches.
Good coaches that align with your vision. That kind of gets back to the Munchak thing. Like Munchak is obviously a really good offensive line coach.
Yes.
Just not in the same system there. So,
right.
Butch Berry, is there a better name for an offensive line coach or no? Butch just seems like to be the name.
Right. No, that's great. And I was a little disappointed to learn, he is bald, which I think is good for like an offensive line coach. You kind of expect someone Butch Berry to be like just jacked out of their mind. So I'm interested to see like, how are the biceps?
Got it. Oh, what kind of haircut would you want for someone just named Butch Berry?
Like a crew cut or
the Kubiak. The Kubiak.
Even that might be a little too. Yeah, that's probably like no longer than the Kubiak.
Yeah, Kubiak training camp edition.
Like if your name was Butch, the hair doesn't really fit.
No, I could not be. I don't think that I fit that.
No,
I don't think I could coach O-line. I don't think I could.
No, they would scare you.
They would scare me. Yeah, especially the bill at the end of dinner. That's probably more scary.
Yeah.
That's the scariest part.
Wine on there.
You put some wine on there. You put some steaks.
You forget the receipt. You
Yeah.
just end up in a world of hurt. You got to remember the receipt always, you know?
You cannot forget the receipt in that situation.
The receipts, I think they say.
Save the receipt. Yeah. Yeah. I heard there's like a system where you can expense things, you know? That's what, that's how
I
you
don't
have
know
to
how
do
that fits with the metaphor.
You kind of, yeah. Anything else you want to talk about with these coaching hires here?
No, I mean, I think that this has been a nice episode. Got to hear from George Paton one-on-one.
Yes. Yeah. How about George Paton, his number 2 in command, getting a little boost?
Yeah, Darren Muji,
Yeah, he's down there with you there in Mobile, right?
assistant general manager. One of the things I like about George, he empowers the people around him. You know,
That
Darren
is true.
reportedly getting some interest from other teams. Dave Ziegler was one of the guys who helped get him in the league. He's now the GM in Las Vegas. So, maybe you connect the dots a little bit. Is that a place that was interested in him? But, he empowered Darren Muji, now an assistant general manager. We got a story coming on him and his path to this moment. It's nice for some of these people behind the scenes, Phil, to get some recognition. A Darren Muji, a Kelly Klein, these people are key to the operation.
Of course, our good friend Champ Kelly heading over to the Las Vegas Raiders. That one hurt. I'll just say that one hurt.
Yeah. Well, and
I don't
so
want to see
that rivalry, I think it softened a little bit in recent years because the teams weren't as good. And when you go to Oakland, like you can feel the rivalry because the people there just hate you. Like you get a lot of middle fingers going into that stadium.
Uh-huh.
It seemed like when they went to Las Vegas, some of that hatred went away a little bit. But
sure,
Josh McDaniels returning as head coach, that should spice things up.
That'll be very spicy, I think. Now, he said that he learned a lot from his time in Denver about people. He said he knew a little bit about football. He didn't, but he had a lot to learn about people.
I just know that first time he comes to Empower Field at Mile High, there is going to be a lot of booing.
There is going to be a lot of booing, yeah.
He should get the decibel meter going for the booing.
He did get a lot of booing, I think, when he came back with the Patriots. So,
but
now that he's the head coach,
and the Raiders, is there more? Is there
it's perfect? If it's perfect,
yeah. You can't think of another team where you'd be like, oh yeah, that's just
Pete Carroll and the Seahawks. That sort of fits nice, I think.
But I mean, for Broncos fans, you're oh, McDaniels with the Raiders is just. Of course. Yeah. Teams just taking on the personality of the organization and the head coach. Darth Vader goes with the Death Star, you wouldn't, if Darth Vader was cruising around in a Lambo, you'd be like, this doesn't feel right.
No, that wouldn't be right.
But Darth Vader on the Death Star. Here's a little analogy. Nathaniel Hackett said he's Han Solo. And then we got the Death Star in.
I think he said he was Han Solo.
he corrected himself on Solo because I think he said he gets the babes.
Oh yeah, exactly, and that his wife was going to be upset. That's true.
He might have said beautiful princess, but
yeah, Layla.
Yeah. What did you say?
Princess Leia.
Oh, I thought you said Layla. I was like, that's not right.
No.
Yeah. Is it Laya? Hard to say.
Yeah, I think it's lit.
But interesting that coach is Han Solo in Denver, and then you got the Death Star, which is what they say the stadium looks like in Las Vegas.
Yep.
And then you have McDaniels. That's.
I don't think McDaniels isn't Darth Vader though.
No.
Who's Luke Skywalker?
Oh, I think a certain quarterback might be Luke Skywalker.
I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I see where you were going with that, but I'm not sure if it all works.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Let's workshop that on our own time.
Would you be Chewbacca?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't know what I'd be.
Watson would be C-3PO. He'd be like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. Always just worried about everything.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's R2D2?
Yeah. That could be me. I'm like DVOA.
That's true. Yeah. You just care about that. Yeah. The non-human element.
Yeah.
It's true.
Exactly. You're the emotional one.
Yeah.
Like, "Mm."
I don't think that I'm Chewbacca. But that's a good try, though. I don't know who I would be. That's a good question.
You don't like Chewbacca? That means
mean-
you could be best friends with Han.
No, I don't think. I don't know. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah. Millennium Falcon.
Who's a Yoda? Who's Yoda?
Ooh. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a good question. We'll think about this more.
Yeah, we
Maybe
gotta think about it more.
you can let us know.
That's true. Let us send in your thoughts, please. NZ Nation. Eric, if somebody wanted to send in some thoughts, how would they do that?
Yeah, well, you could send an email, or really the best way is probably to leave an email
That's what I was going to say.
at neutralzoneshow@gmail.com. You could leave a voicemail, 707 neutral. You don't have to talk to anybody. It's just a beep, and then you just say whatever you want.
Yep.
You could tweet at us at Eric Delala with an A, at Phil Milani with a PH.
The PH. It was a big week for Phil's. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Groundhog's Day is
Yeah.
sort
And
of
there's
a big deal for the Phil community.
I don't know if people have seen. Well, didn't the groundhog die?
What?
Somewhere a groundhog died, and they didn't have time to find a replacement, so they just postponed it. I was like, I don't think it works like that. I think
I didn't see it. You have to, yeah. Groundhog's Day is. Yeah.
And there's that commercial out there, Phil. I don't remember what company it is, but it just says "Thank you, Phil" like a bunch of times on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
We like that commercial. Probably pretty expensive for you to get that out there, but
Very, very
Oh.
interesting that company also went with the non-traditional spelling.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. The
And-
Oregon Zoo came out with a Phil that was an FIL. So that's the traditional. A groundhog named Phil, FIL.
That's kind of the normal way to spell it.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
But no, if NZ Nation has thoughts on our interview with George Paton,
Yeah.
anything that he said, maybe you're interested about the quarterback position. Maybe you're interested.
Maybe it was too much Eric.
Yeah, maybe they're like dial down the Eric, more
Dial
Phil.
down the Eric, I think is definitely some of the feedback. The early feedback, like we sent it out for polling, and the early feedback is
Not enough Phil.
the
Weirdly-
notes. We got some-
Really, they were all coming from like a Bronco email address from inside, like the back corner of the digital media office. I wonder where that. Wonder who sent.
That's where they targeted the IP address, huh? That's where they got that from. Got it. I will say, Eric, you guess what happened to me this morning?
What happened?
I was scrolling through Twitter and it said I had a new follow, and it was me. It said Phil Milani followed me. It was a fake account. I had to report it to Twitter.
Then you woke up.
No, I'm telling you, it was a fake account. I had to report it to Twitter. It was
Wow.
just like how everybody retweets the fake rap sheet.
Yeah,
It was just like that. Except, why would somebody do that for a
we're
film?
gonna break news for the first time.
What if it was just a way better follow?
Yeah,
Dang.
Spider-Man, Jerry Judy things, but I don't think there's any way to tell that your account is not a parody account.
I got a blue check. That's the
Oh,
only way,
nice.
yeah.
Good.
This was like the Mike Kliss account. No,
Oh,
no blue check.
they're going after you, huh?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to give that guy a follow. Or is it gone already?
I don't think so. I'll send you the link to it.
Okay.
It was at Milani Phil. I don't want to give any pub, but
Sneaky.
I did report it, so maybe.
You're listening right now.
Huh?
Listen, you son of a.
Yeah, exactly. I had to take it down.
I just looked that account up. It's now a odd
Oh
picture of a child. I don't like that. Okay.
no, maybe the person already changed it. It was probably some
Should
sort
be
of
gone.
bot. It was not good. I had to report it.
Should we go to our favorite portion of the show?
Shout outs. Let's do it. Let's do it, Eric.
I know that Liz Manis-Geralds was disappointed that she listened to an entire episode last week with no shout out.
Yeah.
So we'll
That's
shout out to her.
Shout out to Liz. Yes.
Yeah. I'd like to shout out George Paton for spending some time with us. Darren
What a homer.
Muji.
You are such
Kelly
a yeah.
They-
Jeez.
Yeah. They've welcomed us in here down at the Reese's Senior Bowl. Not a sponsor.
That's for the behind the Broncos.
Exactly. So I shout out to them. And then Phil, part of the allure of the Senior Bowl is you get to see some cool people down here.
Really? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like I walked by Dan Marino this morning, who's
Are you
one
serious?
of the baddest guys to ever play the position.
Dan Marino was there?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But Phil, a shout out to our friend and hopefully eventual real friend of the podcast, Ed Orgeron. He was sitting at the restaurant at a table near me, and just to hear that voice in person, I mean, it'll just stay with me
Kind
for
of
the
grunty a little bit, huh?
yeah. I mean, I loved it. So
What do you think he was doing down there?
that was the highlight of my week. He was, oh my gosh, he can do whatever he wants. He's a national title winner.
That's true, but not in Alabama and Louisiana. He's in the
That's
wrong
right. But
states.
Mobile's pretty close to New Orleans, to that area, Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge, yeah.
So he was down here. Nick Saban was down here this week. I didn't see him, but he, I guess he did a little show with that impersonator of his, Joey something.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's the same guy who does Chris Collinsworth, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny
That
guy.
guy's fantastic.
I don't know his Twitter account, but he's a good follow.
You got to laugh a little at yourself. I think it's important to do that every once in
He
a while.
said Saban saw him at the end and just goes, all right.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. Eric, I was going to give a shout out to the Bolin family real quickly, I think. Just
Yeah,
because
that's good
it
too.
was announced this week that the Broncos are now going to be up for sale. And, Pat Bolin bought this team in 1984, and it's been in his family for a long time now. And so that must have been an emotional, moment there to just think that, hey, this team is not going to be owned. It's not going to be in the family anymore. That must have been difficult. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth acknowledging that as we talk about who the new owner is going to be, all that sort of stuff, that these are real people being affected. This is part of their identity. And not just that, it's a reminder of their dad. And so, like you said, just probably a very tough day. And they released a very classy statement and handled the end of this really well. So, shout out to them. And of course, I think the Bullens will always be, a part of the community and the impact that they've made, whether it's through the Boys and Girls Club or other charitable efforts. That's not going to go away. So,
and obviously, Pat Bowlen is a Hall of Fame owner, and you just hope that whoever owns the team next is going to be as dedicated to winning and investing in the community as Mr. B was. So, I think that if you're talking about what kind of an owner do you want to own in your favorite team, I think Mr. B was that. That's the kind of person you want to own your team. So, so shout out to them. Yeah, that was probably a good investment, though, huh?
I think so. I think that worked out okay.
Yeah, 1984 to now, that's pretty good return, I think.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, say this team is sold for, there's like a report out there for like maybe like $4 billion.
Yeah.
What is it going to be like 30 years from now?
I don't know.
Just think about the growth of the NFL and everything. It's just like, man,
the Moon franchise will probably be will be launching around then. They'll be going to the moon every week to play.
Yeah. Like when the schedule comes out, it'll be like, we got a good game on Mars.
Yeah. We'll be like, we'll probably have to leave on Friday just to like get acclimated to the lack of gravity.
Exactly. Yeah. That's even if there's still games on this planet,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. All our games could be on the moon or on Mars, maybe.
That's right.
So maybe you wouldn't even.
We'll be immortal by then, probably.
Eric, how far do you think you could throw the ball if there was no gravity?
Wouldn't it just kind of float away?
Yeah. Yeah. Accuracy would be difficult, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're like, this guy has got great arm talent, but he missed by an entire planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Man,
Yeah.
Evaluating a quarterback, it would just be really difficult if there was no.
Every throw would look like that Tim Tebow pass that kind of gets circulated every now and then.
From practice, that just wobbles around.
Yeah, every throw would look like that.
Yeah. We could play quarterback.
Tim was just ahead of his time.
That is true. Considering Tim Tebow, like he could have been sent from the future.
Yeah.
I'm from the future.
That's possible.
I'm from the future. All right, Eric. Anything else? Anything else that we didn't get to here?
No, I think that was nice.
That was a nice little episode, huh?
Yeah. We'll be reunited next week, probably, maybe.
Hopefully. I mean, gosh.
So I'll be in LA next week for the Super Bowl.
You're going to the Super Bowl?
We can't be apart for this long. It doesn't feel right.
So you're going down there to the Super Bowl, huh?
Yeah.
What's going on down there?
Well, DeMarcus Ware could get into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I think I asked to go on that too, and they just said no to that too.
Kind of a common thread, isn't it?
Yeah. Like almost like maybe I'm dangerous, you know? Like they're like, no, we can't have Phil around. This is too
Woke up feeling dangerous.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, nice work down there in Mobile. Thanks for reporting back and getting one heck of an exclusive interview, Eric. That was
anything for you, Phil.
You want Broncos news? I mean, that interview, once we release this, it's going to be everywhere.
A lot of clicks. Please
everywhere.
Please click.
Yeah. The podcast numbers. What's a bandwidth on that? We should be okay, right? Hopefully it doesn't crash.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully you're back here next week and we can do it in person. If not, we'll make it happen some other way.
We'll do our best.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's going to do it for us. For Eric Dalala, I am Phil Milani. You've been listening to
The Neutral Zone.